Throughout history, the pen has been a tool for the artist, the politician, the author, and most importantly, the dreamer. The ink within is the lifeblood of illustrations, the written word, and mathematical equations, allowing those who would understand a glimpse into worlds other than their own. What worlds will you create while playing with ink? Hi, I'm Plutach.
And I'm Nayruan.
And this is...
Andrew from Sketchy Rolls. Hello.
Woohoo!
Hello, and welcome to Playing with Ink. Okay, awesome. All right, Andrew. So the gist of this podcast is we talk about worlds, and we talk about all these worlds people have created in a TTRPG situation, in a writing situation, just basically creative works. But what like you're from Sketchy Rolls, right? So this is your chance to plug yourself, introduce yourself to our listeners and to the podcast.
Well, hello, wonderful listeners. I'm Andrew. I run a podcast called Sketchy Rolls. You can find that on any place that you're able to download and absorb podcasts. Just do a search for Sketchy Rolls, you'll find us. We're also on Instagram, TikTok, at Sketchy Rolls. You can find us there with clips from our show, which is an actual play D&D adventure where monsters are the protagonists. And I tell stories with very creative players at my table. I'm the DM.
That's awesome. Okay, so I'm gonna jump right into the questions. We asked this to every single one of our guests, and it's something we discussed in our first episode with our community. But what do you think world building means? How does it affect you? And how does it affect you while you're exploring, writing, or playing in a world? So basically, how does that definition of world building that you have affect your play style, your GMing style, your writing style?
So at least in terms of world building, everything kind of expands from a concept or an idea. So at least in terms of the game that I run for our show, that concept has been monsters. I'd want to tell a story where monsters are the protagonists, and what does a world like that feel like? What does that mean? And so that concept is kind of the core that I try my best to stick to. But in terms of world building within D&D, I find it a very collaborative medium. And in terms of how I DM, I love introducing ideas from my players that will change the world. Now, that could be in the form of a character, that can be in the form of a place. But I find that helps, at least from a DM perspective, helps engage them more, but also, gives me a little bit of creative play too, because they as often as, if you've played any D&D game, a player is going to go off into the wilderness, off script. You can never plan for everything. So why not give them the power to make a suggestion? And I'll take that idea and, I'll weave it in to the story. So that's kind of like how that collaborative way of with your players telling this story, and sometimes they'll suggest something that will trigger an idea in my mind that I'll make a note of, that sometimes expands things within the lore. So, for example, in our story of the Brood on the podcast, just as a joke, it came off from this off the cuff, like I was misheard in describing something within the story. I think it's in episode 1 of the Brood. And I'm describing a storage room. And one of my players very quickly off the cuff said, door room? Please tell me it's not a door room, a room full of doors. And so that idea I just found was so imaginative and funny. And it ended up becoming this joke, this running joke that had happened on quite a few episodes, to the point where just the thought, the idea of what is a door room, what does that mean? who runs this door room, and where do these doors lead to? Which ended up becoming a full episode on We Open With, and we expanded that whole idea. And so it's like,
which is a great episode, by the way.
Little things like that just spark something in your mind. It can be something so simple or funny, but it starts with that. What attracts you to it? Is it something funny? Is it something exciting? And then your mind just starts creating these little threads and stories in your mind. Who's the doorman? Yeah,
that sounds creepy. That sounds really creepy. Now, I do have a question about that. Now, you were talking about kind of how you help your players kind of build the world. Do you find that they do that at the table during a game, or do you do that when you're not at the table? Do you ask them questions, or do you find that takes place mostly at the table?
So I think there's two different things. There's two different streams that we have here. So if you're a DM and you're running a game, each player is in, they have ideas of what they want to have happen, or have be the history of their character. And so they will develop those ideas, and they'll mention, like, for example, Jack, who plays Mr. Morbid on The Brood, they mentioned about, they love this idea of having a dual personality, and they have this sort of hat, this top hat. And so their sort of thing was, once that top hat comes down, they're this kind of more savage, intense vampire than being this sort of timid agoraphobe when it's not all the way down. So you've got these kind of ideas that your players want to have with their characters. But certainly if I'm running a session, I just love the idea of chaos, which is always going to happen. And I will have certain ideas of at least what's the contents of a room. I have ideas of what's the main scope. But certainly I love to just sort of ask a question. And so a lot of the time when I'm giving sort of creative freedom to my players, that's the first they're hearing of it. It's in that moment, because I think that's more special, because that first initial idea I think is you've got no time to really think about it. It's just there. It's put onto the table. It's put onto the plate. What is it? And we've just got to work with it. It could be genius. It could be terrible. But I think that's the that's the magic of it, and that's sort of the fun that I get out of it. Is
Yeah.
in the moment, not
Yeah.
to really. I think there's as a DM, as I used to be really, um, uh, I think it's a newbie mistake to feel that you can be as in control. You can plan for
Yeah.
every sort of thing.
Yeah.
What happens if the players don't go through this door? What happens if they try and rob this NPC?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I used to try and think of every permutation that could be out of a list of options that I would provide, and it got really sort of, I don't know, it just meant a lot of more work for me. So now my sort of process in when I'm DMing is I have bullet points, things that I kind of want to keep them on track with, and outside of that, we're just going to see we're just going to see what happens.
Yeah. My favorite thing to do is tell my players, "You tell me," because when they ask me questions, I just say, "You tell me," and the look on their faces is very concerning. I will say they're not used to it yet. We just recently started playing Daggerheart, which is more of a
Mhm.
the players come up with stuff more than D&D. So when my group plays and I tell them, you tell me what you see, or you tell me what the color is, and they just have this look of panic. But hopefully it'll get to the point where they can rhythm. They're already starting to get better, but I'm slightly enjoying the panic on their faces. It's kind of funny, but maybe that's just me.
I definitely think there is something to this level of engagement you get out of your players.
Hmm.
As soon as you give that level of control to a player, I often see the there's two things that happen. There's first the deer in headlights.
Yeah,
It's like,
yeah,
oh, I've got to do something. I've got to think of something. But it's like once that subsides, the idea of okay, um, let me add to it, and it's like when you enter a pool for the first time and you're
hmm,
just sort of trying to get your body to get used to the temperature. As soon as you find that comfort, it's just like wow. So a trick that I usually do in um, a first session. So like I said, I may have ideas for what I want to get out of the session. But sometimes I find there's this real fun thing that you can get out of creating this world together. You know what the vibe is, but you may
hmm,
not know every single building that is in this town that you may be in. So, say for example, let's take the generic, you're meeting at a tavern, right? So, you tell the players, okay, you're to meet at a tavern for whatever the scenario may be. But I would ask each of my players, as you're traveling to this tavern, what is a landmark that you see as you're
yeah,
going there? And sometimes they'll mention something. I see a statue of a griffin that is being uh, subdued by a knight, and it's made out of granite, and it's in the center of the square. And I pass that, and I'll ask a following on question on this statue that you see. Um, uh, there's an inscription. It may be a little bit faded, but what are some words that you can make out? And sometimes they'll say, "Oh, it's a name." And so that adds to the history of this town that we're now in. That person's given something, and I'll ask every sort of player that. So together, we're building the location. You can sort of think of these creative ideas in your mind. Each person, they've come to this tavern, but you're now thinking about, oh, there's a statue. I mean, we could play this game right now. So now I know there's this statue. If I was to give you as an example, you're traveling to this tavern. What is a landmark that you've passed as you're traveling to this tavern?
Chandler, you go.
Chandler.
Chandler, go.
So we are traveling to this tavern. Now, a landmark that we would have passed in, I would say, a statue of a local hero.
A local hero. Okay. This statue, you can see there, seems to have graffiti that is put upon it. It's on the face of this statue, this local hero. Now, this graffiti that is on their face is of some sort of sign or symbol. What is that?
Let's see. I'm trying to get back into my player mindset here.
First thing that comes to your mind, a symbol.
The symbol is definitely of the dragon's head that was embedded on him after he slayed the dragon that he protected the town from. So it's a symbol of a decapitated dragon.
And so it's just things like that. And for example, Plutach, if you want to, you're traveling to this tavern where we'll say that it's a fantasy setting, general D&D fantasy setting. You're traveling through the town. What's a landmark that you see?
I think an apothecary, but it's like a creepy apothecary, you know.
Oh, a creepy apothecary. Lovely. Okay. As you're traveling past this creepy apothecary, you see the door open of the shop, and a figure, the shopkeeper, steps out, their arms folded. What do they look like?
Winifred Sanderson. Just 3 old spinster ladies sucking the lives out of children. Ah! Sorry, this was yours. Yours is way cooler than mine. It's like I got a stupid statue, and you get the friggin' Sanderson sisters.
I will say, actually, I think it's like almost like a loxodon, you know.
That's an elephant?
Yeah, that's like the elephant people, I think. I think I'm saying that right.
Fantastic. Yes, okay. Well, I knew what it was.
Yeah, okay,
patting
perfect.
myself on the back for the D&D knowledge there. But fantastic. So it's like, you know, just in that simple suggestion, that changes the shape of this store as well. You now have to have doorways that are much larger to enable for this figure of this creepy apothecary with the visage of an elephant. But I think in engaging my characters in there, it kind of lowers this this sense of you know, oh, I don't know what to expect. I'm giving you control. And so, and we're sort of working together in creating this thing. It's I found in doing that, you're building this trust together in creating this story. I'm not cornering you into a place that we want this story to get. I may have bullet points and what I want to get out of the story, but it's a collaborative thing. We're telling this story together. I would have never known that there was this Loxodon owning an apothecary in this town. I would have never known there was a heroic statue within this town with the graffiti symbol of a decapitated head upon this hero. So yeah, it's just things like that. I love getting to play with my character, with my players with that.
That is so cool. All right, so as I have a question for you then. So, in very general terms, what is Moonwilder? Except you've kind of already answered that. It's kind of like a collaborative, like storytelling thing. Except I wanted you to tell us what's the aesthetic? You've told us how you create. I want you to tell us now what you create.
Well, I guess there's two different things there. So there is how I run a session, and then there is the setting of my world, which is
Yeah.
Moonwilder. So those are two different things. But I guess the vibe of Moonwilder, the best way that I can describe it, is a place where monsters and you can talk about vampires, werewolves, demons, zombies, like things that you would imagine within old school monster horror. There's this world where there are these supernatural beings that live side by side with the other races of D&D. And in my setting, there is this sort of sorry, just turn off my door there. My door ring. Hello, idea for the podcast. Where was I? Lost my chain of thought now. Thanks, door. It's the doorman. Nice. They're knocking. Monsters, right? And they have this sort of outsider almost mentality where, like for example, they're savage creatures, or they can be savage creatures, and so there's this sort of thing that they carry around with them of story and history, and this relentless killing that they may have done in history's past.
Just ignore that. That's in the past now.
Yeah, I took this sort of idea where there would be things that would be introduced into this world to sort of allow monsters to live side by side with different races. But there's still this it's sort of almost inbuilt, right? It's like it's passed on. Racism is a difficult thing to just sort of get past entirely, and this is something that those of monster kind, those who are willing to try and live side by side, and those that don't, it's still there. There's still something that is on the periphery for people that live in this world. So that's basically the crux, the main idea of this place. There are monsters, and all of the stories that I tell within Moonwilder will have a monster race as part of its main. That they're going to be all the characters. The group that I'm playing with will be a type of monster, and that's sort of the idea of Moonwilder. I came up with this world, this name, this word, Moonwild, and I just sort of Moonwilder, and that kind of has now come to be the terminology for monster kind, Moonwilders.
Ooh,
that's the kind of the naming convention that I've given them. But within the lore of my world, because monsters, and I grew up absorbing lots of black and white monster horror, and I love Frankenstein, the Mummy, like all of these different kinds of creatures. They all stem from things within the night. And from the world of Moonwilder, I kind of have these 4 pillars that exist in this world, which are the sort of governing force or deities that exist for Moonwilder kind, which is the Moon Court. And within the Moon Court, there are these 4 figures. There's the Father of Shadow. Wait, actually, let me do it from the top. It's the Mother of Night,
Ooh.
the Sister of the Eldritch, the Father of Shadow, and the Brother of the Wild. And these are the 4 pillars. And because they're like sort of seen as being these constellations within the sky, they also kind of turn into the directions. So it's sort of like the Mother of Night is north, east, south, and west. And so there's these 4 pillars within the world of Moonwilder. And
That is
each of
so
these
cool. That is so cool, man.
and each of these deities sort of govern different types of monsters. The way I've kind of sort of set it up within my lore is they sort of the Moon Court represents this mystical, interconnected. There's this family, this dark cosmic family of beings, and each of them sort of embody these intangible aspects of darkness, which is what all monsters are sort of in our world are made of. So the Mother of Night, she embodies majesty, serenity, and eternity. The Father of Shadow represents stealth, seduction, and death. The Brother of the Wild symbolizes freedom, savagery, and power. And the Sister of the Eldritch signifies wisdom, fear, and mystery. And so it's these intangible aspects which then they're sort of, I guess, the best way to put it, descendants that become Moonwilders or monsters. They kind of carry these aspects within them. So the Mother of Night, they kind of have monsters within that they govern, that they kind of provide a small part of their cosmic power. It's like the way I've written something here. It's the Moon Court shaped monsters into existence, crafted from blood, bone, bark, and the spirit of their dark aspects. These creatures became the descendants of the dark, and their progeny would evolve into what we know as Moonwilders. And so the Mother of Night, she kind of governs demons and sort of elemental creatures. The Father of Shadow, they govern the undead, vampires, zombies. The Brother of the Wild, they sort of govern werewolves, shifters, and just sort of monstrous beasts. And the Sister of the Eldritch, they they sort of govern lots of the weird stuff. So witches specifically, covens, and aberrations. So that's kind of the idea of this overarching governing court of cosmic beings
That's
that
really
exist
cool.
in this world.
Yeah, that's super cool. I did have. How did you like come up with the direction thing and the constellations? Like, where did that come into? Like, what was your inspiration for that, or did it just pop into your head one day?
I think I'm trying to go back now, but essentially, it stemmed from I think things just sort of expand. So I think I'd mentioned briefly to you both that the idea from Moonwilder came from just like a casual game that I
Yeah.
was running with friends.
Mm-hmm.
And it came from an idea of running a D&D game of where all of the players would be werewolves.
And they were at a
And
summer camp, right? That was the
summer camp? Yeah.
summer
So
camp? Yeah.
that was basically the idea. There was going to be this sort of mystery that they had to solve at this summer camp, and that was the idea. But as we sort of kind of went down this game, this was the first game that I'd run in this really strange way, in which I described to you, where I'm given a lot of creative freedom to my players.
Mm-hmm.
So in this game, before we even ran the one shot, the initial session, I ran a 1-to-1 D&D game with each player, one-on-one,
Mm-hmm.
where they were the protagonists. They're the main part of the story that's going to be told for that evening, and the other players just sat in happily just to sort of listen in to see what was going on. And I would ask them, really, where do you live? What does your street look like? So I would I would give them all of this control. And after, sort of having all of this creative content provided by each player, I think I then was, in the back of my mind, I started to build this idea of, well, we've got werewolves.
Mm-hmm.
We know there are other monsters. Where did they come from? So everything sort of stemmed from the original wording for the name, Moonwilder. There's okay. They have to look up to the sky, and so I think I'd have I written a thing down for it?
Searching through the notes. Searching through the notes.
I'd written this thing. So, they'd have to look up to the sky. That's where the moon is. And so I'd written this thing as a paragraph. That's this idea. The celestial constellations of the moon core are revered. Amongst the earliest of recorded history, stars were used as ways to navigate when lost. Eventually, within Moonwilder culture, these stars became the cardinal points of direction. Looking to the moon, the stars, and the night sky would steer the weariest of monster kind to safety. So that was the idea. Wherever they were, they could look up, they'd be able to look at these constellations, these deitic figures, and find their way to where they need to be rather.
Doctor, quickly! It's my son. I think he's caught a plague. Gothica Plague Worlds is a dark fantasy 5e compatible TTRPG coming to Kickstarter in November. Wander the cobbles of gas-lamp lit streets inspired by the Victorian era, choosing from many new subclass archetypes or even one of the brand new classes. Gothica Plague Worlds is a complete package with new mechanics, storylines, and a diseased world ready for your next campaign.
Your boy should be fine. You, however, do not look so good. Let me take a closer look.
No, don't come any closer. It's too late for me, Doctor. Bolt your door, and do not open it. Goodbye, boy. Gothica Plague Worlds is now live on Kickstarter.
So this is a D&D game, right?
Yeah.
So did any of the Forgotten Realms or like Eberron or any of the pre-established D&D lore, because this is very apparent that you have so much lore that is at your disposal here, through the methodic process of going with your players and then you taking that and like molding it into what you need for a story. I'm assuming that's kind of like after what you've described that I'm summarizing that correctly. But
Yeah.
so was there any established lore of the D&D realms that have been what we've known since like the 80s, that like influenced you? Or is there anything that you took from that?
So initially in that first game that I was running, I had this sort of time frame of it being in the 80s. Think very Stranger Things, but your cast of characters are teenage werewolves instead of
Yes.
random squishy humans. I at least for within the established lore from Forgotten Realms and D&D, in the world of Moonwilder and in our game, other races exist. So humans, elves, orcs, fae kind. But I'd sort of I love the idea that there'd be you'd have this melting pot of all of these different races, but they they looked at supernatural creatures, these beings of darkness, as being evil, dark, and disgusting, and it sort of went hand in hand with that setting of the 80s with the scandalous nature of D&D at that time as well. So I was like, oh, okay, vilifying this these creatures, rightly or wrongly, for what they have done, regardless of what they're doing now, like what their ancestors had done, vilifying them and putting them into this place where they're pointed at and stared at. So yeah, I didn't really go into really any core details of what deitic figures exist for lawful good unmonster-like normies that exist in this world, from the Forgotten Realms, more so because I wanted to focus on our players, and the way I kind of have sort of built upon things has always been out of necessity. So at least within the story I was telling at that time, everything revolved around our monsters, and I expanded outward from that. And I didn't really need to really focus on who were the deitic figures of orcs or who were the deitic figures of humans. But should any of my players have done that within a session, we may have found an answer. But as of yet, I've not really made a point to.
That's really okay. So this is actually, I'm super excited about this because this is actually a very unique, I think it's a very unique style of GMing. So because most of the GMs I talk to love to over prepare, they love to make so much lore that will never get used. But Chandler is one of them.
100%.
Yeah.
And so many of the people we've talked to are like that because they just love like writing and world building. Not to say that you don't, but you prefer doing it as a collaborative experience and out of necessity. which is honestly so cool and so not necessarily different, but the fact that you are able to do it successfully means attributes a lot to your creativeness and your ability to improvise. I mean, we saw just seconds ago how you were able to take what me and Chandler said and mold it into like a cool kind of like story thing. But so yeah, I just think that's super cool. So I'm literally geeking out right now listening to you talk about it.
I think this way of how it's something that's kind of come from my experiences being both a player and a DM, because I did used to be a DM that would over prepare.
Mm-hmm.
And I used to write reams and reams of notes. You know, I think when I started out, I think most new DMs have this level of anxiety of trying something new for the first time, and you may not know every single rule that there is in the handbook, and you've got all of these things that you have to kind of be on top of and think about, and it's very performative at the same time. And I think my earliest sort of experiences as being a DM kind of had this sort of, it didn't click for me right away because I had a few toxic players. And so I was like, oh, okay, I'm not creating a space that is connecting with them without understanding that they were just being really difficult, poking holes specifically. Even though it's my first time, you don't have these answers straight away. And it kind of led to me being over prepared, and I'd spend so many hours just trying to have all of this information just in case someone would have this out there situation. But it doesn't matter how much time you spend, you can never think of every potential outcome. So just to because it was getting so difficult to spend that amount of time DMing, I wasn't feeling the fun. So I kind of went to DMing from the other perspective. What if you run a D&D game and you prepare nothing? What happens? So I started running games where with the players that I would
Chandler, that's his nightmare.
I'm gonna wake up in a cold sweat in the middle of the night, and
this is the thing. I would run games where we'd roll for the setting, we'd roll for the MacGuffin. What's the whole point of what it is that you're trying to do there?
Brave, braver than I.
Well, it was more as a knee-jerk reaction to just sort of get out of this way of how I had been DMing. So I went into it from a completely, okay, well, I have nothing. Let's just go with it. Let's see if we can come up with a game. And it took a few sessions to kind of really find something that I felt could work. But you kind of have to just let go. And I think what had been holding me back before was this fear of not having.
For our listeners, Chandler's shaking his head. I'm nodding my head. So there is a dichotomy here.
I mean, it's allowing, letting go of the fear of getting everything right.
Yes.
Because you can't. So once you understand that idea, lean into the chaos. And that was my whole focus. It was just like, I've got nothing to lean on. My players can't come at me for like, we're going to create this together. So I take the pressure off myself from having to create content by asking my players. So together we share this thing where we're creating what it's going to be. And now I kind of fashioned this way in how I DM, where it's now a little bit of both. Okay, I don't go into these sessions, especially for the podcast, without having an idea of what's the point. I have bullet points of what I want to get across, but I am open to lean into chaos when necessary.
I think
that's very. Oh, go ahead, Chandler.
I think this idea. I mean, I'm joking. Like it about me. I do want to be in control. I do want to know more about my world and like how the players interact. But that is very fascinating. And I admit it. You're much braver than me, and probably braver than most DMs out there. But I can assume this also, you have a ton of trust at the people at your table as well. So.
Well, here's another fun thing. So there is an episode on our podcast. I have it's a one shot that I've run with players that we've ran a game for the very first time together. They were all from other podcasts, actual play podcasters. It's a it's a thing I've called Whose Role Is It Anyway? And so the whole purpose of this is just to run a session in exactly the way I've described to you. However, I make it as difficult as possible for my players also, because they don't get to choose what kind of character that they get to pick. They randomize it.
They're awesome. Going to.
So there is a, if you check out our podcast, Sketchy Rolls, there is an episode, there is a one shot on there where we roll for the setting, we roll for the MacGuffin that is going to happen within this one shot, and then all of the players roll randomized characters, and we try and create a story by the end of it. We do it.
I love
spoilers.
But this
nice.
I just wrote that down on the notepad to edit this episode with for like spot. So now I'm gonna go check that out. But again, I don't think this style could work with like say new players, right? Like you can't just like trust the new players that come in, like because. Go ahead.
I think it. You know, you'd at least need to feel comfortable in I don't think I've run a session like this with someone that's never played D&D before, because I think there's just too many things to really think about, and to throw someone into the deep end, you know, there is, before even running a session like that, I have to preempt any players that would be at my tables that, are you going to be okay with this? Because I have had you know, some players, I mean, and this is all more session zero stuff, and you know, making sure that certain players are happy with what content is going to be put within the game. But you know, there is a level of anxiety of throwing someone into the deep end. In, what do you see? What's down there? What's behind you? It's a creature. Tell me what it is. You know, some players can get sort of feel a level of anxiety, but I think there is something really beautiful that can kind of come out of that at the same time. That the original game that I ran for Moonwilder, every single one of my players had we'll say were neurospicy in certain ways, in you know,
yes,
including myself, including myself. So it's like you know, there were some players at the beginning where I was introducing this style that like I said, you have to find your comfort within it. But once you're there, like for example, let's take that very short stint where I asked you both, you know, this example of you're in this town, you're getting to the tavern, and that excitement that you had where Plutach was she had an apothecary, and it's straight away in your mind, an idea popped into your mind, and you shouted out. That level of excitement, just sort of, it builds, and it is infectious. And so you find that when other people engage with this idea, of they can tell this collaborative story, other people just sort of come into it. So I think if I was running a game like this for completely new people, I would strip back certain things, not throw them all the way in, but certainly introduce little bits. And here's another D&D thing that you can take to your table as a fun little bit. Let's say you're running a one shot, and this is a really simple way of taking this idea. So you would have set up your encounter for 6 goblins, 6 unnamed goblins for an encounter. Now, when you're going through that encounter at your table, a fun thing that I like to do is when someone is, you go through your, whose initiative it is, and they're telling me, okay, I want to approach this goblin number 3. And so I would ask them, pick out something from goblin number 3. There's a question to you. What do they look like? Something?
The short goblin has a bunch of trinkets on his back.
No.
He has a teddy bear that's just ripped to pieces. He's holding it with a dagger and holding the dagger at you. What's wrong? What's wrong, Plutach? What's wrong? What's wrong?
There's context to this. There's context.
What's wrong? It's a goblin. It's a goblin. What are you talking about?
Shut up. You know what you're doing.
No, I don't. I ain't got a clue.
Chandler ran a one-shot with a goblin called Gibbles.
No, I didn't.
It's on YouTube. It's on YouTube.
Gibbles.
Yeah, and that was the voice.
This goblin also has no concept of numbers. Yes. That you find out because he's constantly shifting back and forth between you and the party and trying to count, but can't get past 1.
So yes, that's it in a nutshell. I mean, obviously you're enacting some sort of trauma that you've put onto Plutach from another game, but certainly,
unfortunately,
yes.
I wasn't in that game, but I have heard things and watched it.
She's heard things. She's heard things from our goblin masters.
Well, yes. Well, bundle, Gibbles not bundle.
The secrets from our kind have been explained to Plutach.
Oh gosh, there's 2 of them now.
What?
Oh my goodness!
What that word means? Secrets. Gibbles learned a new word.
Yay!
Okay.
I'm stopping this now before this podcast becomes goblin impressions.
Oh, that's the next
for 2
podcast.
Hours.
We're just gonna get together later and just make a goblin podcast where 2 goblins randomly somehow come across recording equipment in a cave somewhere.
Okay. What does this do?
All right, we're serious. We're serious. We're precious.
We're serious.
Serious time now. Let's get into it. Come on.
Sure thing, boss.
So the goblin is Gibbles. The trinket goblin is what I'm hearing.
Yeah,
so
this goblin.
Andrew, take that what you will.
Yeah, so that's another thing that you could probably take as taking that sort of idea of collaborating with your players, giving them a little bit of creative freedom. You could take that and just put it into this tiniest scale of an encounter. Mm-hmm. Just describe the creatures that you're fighting.
Yeah. Just like testing the waters a little bit.
And just like that, I took ownership of something and inserted it into the situation. It makes me more invested. It again, like
absolutely
gives players the ownership of the world along with yourself.
I had within our podcast on the Brood. We had each of our players meeting the BBEG of the game.
Mhm.
Oh, would that be the right description? Because technically they're the bad guys. But anyway, uh,
Big,
uh,
big, good, great guy. Big, good, great guy.
yeah, BGG.
The BGG.
Well, anyway, they spotted something. They had a really fantastic perception roll, and I asked them to describe another prisoner that would be within this setting that they'd picked out from a note on a page that they'd seen, and they created one of the most fantastic vampires that I could never have come up with. And yeah, it just came out from something as simple as that, like asking this question.
That's so cool.
Yes, Cerilius Vanderpump was this vampire's name, and they are fantastic.
I love it. All right. I have one last question for you, Andrew. And
Sure.
so hold on. I can't see the question because my mic is blocking it. Give me 1 second. So, as you've described this podcast you have is kind of like spooky vibes, horror vibes. However, the way you approach it seems to be less like your typical horror. So, horror in TTRPGs can be very difficult sometimes. Do you think your podcast is strictly horror, or do you think there's other elements to it? And building off of that, this is kind of like two questions in one. So, it can be difficult to convey horror, and because it's all in our heads, you know, like, and sometimes that's an advantage. But so how do you like scare and frighten the players and keep the audience on the edge of their seats while you GM a game, if you consider your game horror to begin with?
I guess the best way that I can describe it is I have a particular flavor and vibe that I have with our show. And that flavor is like dark, gothic monsters. And I have two shows that where we sort of tell two different stories. We have the Brood and we have the Eldritch Covenant. And both of them have slightly different vibes. I within the Brood, I have players that are living out their vampire bad guy fantasies in enacting the most horrid sort of things that they can do to these inept guards. But within the Eldritch Covenant, that's kind of more of a whimsical mystery that you're sort of finding out things as you sort of go on. And I think it really depends on the kind of place you are within the place my players are within the game. Because when your protagonist, at least with the characters, are monsters, it's kind of things are topsy-turvy. You know, you have beings that are empowered to do terrible things or have done terrible things, depending on the kind of history they've provided me. And so it kind of, when you're coming across other creatures within that world, it's like, okay, it's not the same as if you're creating a standard horror sort of environment. I mean, there is a sense of maybe more so within the Eldritch Covenant, where there's this. I describe certain settings in a way where the players themselves don't know where they are, and providing the detail on what it's like being there. The sound of the voices that they would hear, whispers, the smells, and the temperature that they would be in. And you can kind of provide that sort of tense environment and situation. But I wouldn't say that they fall specifically within to the they're sort of horror adjacent or horror flavored. Like
Yeah.
let me give you an example. Let's on Netflix we have Wednesday, the show. Right now within Wednesday we have lots of monstrous creatures within the show. It's not specifically horror. There may be certain little bits where you'd find the creep factor, but it's kind of flavored in the darkness of the world that it's presenting. That's the best way that I can sort of describe it.
Yeah. It's
I
like,
think if I just
go
add
ahead.
on to that, I think it also kind of depends on what the expectations are that you've set within the story that you're trying to tell.
Yeah.
In The Brood, I'm telling the story where our players are vampires and they're trying to break out of a monster prison. And so it's kind of more suspense. Are they going to get caught? Aren't they? What's going to happen? So it's like at least for me, in the way that I do this collaborative storytelling, you match the beats of your players. So if your players have a sort of free-willed, almost cartoony aspect in how they're almost over the top ridiculous with their chaos, then you sort of match that energy. But if, like for example with my other game, the Eldritch Covenant, if I find my players are in a situation and I can sense that vibe where, okay, I'm describing something that is providing a little bit of anxiety, I kind of push the pedal a little bit more and create that additional bit of imagery to help them absorb within that. It's like kind of you see what the temperature is at that moment, and you as the GM, you can use your let me full on pour on the descriptive narrative to
Yes.
provide this visual that will frighten them.
Yeah. So would you say then that maybe horror is not the genre, but the setting is, would you say that's
Uh,
fair to say? Or would you say it's more of the spooky setting? Like
yeah,
I'm just
I'd
simply
say
trying to get like a thing for,
I
yeah.
yeah I guess it's certainly spooky. Is probably the best that I could describe it. I mean,
Yeah.
I absolutely do love things that are. I love horror films. I love things that are frightening. But I think part of that also depends on what your. I think I mentioned it, but didn't sort of finish that thought. What your players are wanting to get out of the game.
Yeah.
And I think in both of the stories that I'm telling on the pod, neither of them are full on. I want it to be a full on horror. It's not
Yeah.
something that those players have signed up for. But certainly, if it was something that I wouldn't put it past myself having something that is full on horror as another
Yeah.
story that I would tell. Yeah.
That's super, super cool. All right. Thank you so much for being on this podcast, and we're gonna wrap up. But one more time, plug yourself. Like, say where people can find you. Where can they listen to your amazing stuff? Because I am like, you're so inspirational. Like, I'm geeking out over all this. It
Oh, bless
sounds
you.
so cool, and I'm gonna take like advice in my games that you have said. I'm like, oh, I'm gonna use that now. So yes, where can people find you?
Oh, thank you. That's really, really kind of you to say.
Oh, you're welcome.
People out there listening, you can find myself, Andrew, at Sketchy Rolls, any place that you'd be absorbing your podcasts, Spotify, Apple Pods. If you just search for Sketchy Rolls, you'll find us. You can also find us on social, where you can find any artwork that we create, animations on Instagram, TikTok, at Sketchy Rolls also. I'd love to have you.
Awesome. All right. Well, I've been Plutach, and
I'm Nayruan or Chandler.
and thank you so much, Andrew, for coming on our podcast. And this has been Playing with Ink, and we will see you next time.
Bye, guys.
Bye.